Welcome back to another crochet tutorial, and today we're going to be crocheting this adorable cow plushie. Just like any of my other crochet tutorials, this one is very customizable and really just depends on the kind of yarn you use. In that original cow that I had showed you, I used a very velvety yarn. It was a little bit thicker, but for this tutorial, so you can see a little bit easier, I'm going to be using impeccable yarn. It's acrylic and it is a little bit thinner. Other supplies you're going to want to use is felt. I have felt in 3 different colors, 1 for the eyes and 2 for the nose. We're also going to want some sort of filling to fill up your plushie. I like to use polyfill. For this project, I'm going to be using a 4.5mm crochet hook. That's just so I can get some tight stitches, but of course if you're using a different kind of yarn, adjust your hook size from there. We'll also need a stitch marker and an embroidery needle, as well as some scissors. And if you're going to be using felt, you're probably going to want some glue. I like to use E6000. I just feel like it holds really well. And we're going to want yarn in a few different colors. We're going to start off with our base color. This is going to be the color most of our plushie will be. And we're starting with the magic ring. I start my magic rings by crisscrossing the yarn over 2 fingers and grabbing that back strand of yarn. And then we're going to yarn over and pull through. From here, we are going to add 6 single crochets into this magic circle. Once I have those 6 stitches, I'm going to pull the tail of my magic ring closed. And now I am going to go into that first stitch and add a single crochet. You can see me struggling here. And then we want to mark that first crochet with our stitch marker, just so we know where our row began. Now we are going to add 2 single crochets into each stitch on our ring. So by the end of this row, you should have 12 single crochets on your work. By the end, it should look something a little like this. And now that we've gotten that first row in, we can really pull the tail of that magic ring to make sure it is completely shut, if you haven't already. Now I am going to start on the 3rd row, so I removed that stitch marker, and we are going to place a single crochet into that first stitch, and of course mark it with our stitch marker. For this next row, instead of placing 2 single crochets into each stitch, we are going to put a single crochet in one stitch and then 2 into the next stitch. So basically every other stitch should have 2 single crochets. By the end of this row, you should have 18 stitches. By now, you might be sensing a little bit of a pattern. So what I'm going to do next is repeat, and I am going to remove the stitch marker and place a single crochet into that first stitch, and then mark it with my stitch marker, of course. That stitch marker always marks the first stitch on our row. So at the moment, we have 1 single crochet. Now I'm adding another single crochet into that second stitch, and into that 3rd stitch, we are going to add 2 single crochets. You're going to repeat this pattern by adding 1 single crochet into the first 2 stitches and 2 single crochet into that 3rd stitch all the way around your work. By the end of this row, you should have 24 stitches. We're going to repeat the process again of removing that stitch marker, marking our first stitch and adding it back in. This time we are going to be increasing every 4 stitches. So instead of increasing on that 3rd stitch, we are going to put 1 single crochet into each of the first 3 stitches, and on that 4th stitch we are going to add 2 single crochets. Again, if you're sensing the pattern, you probably understand where this is going by now. You're going to repeat this all around your work, and at the end of this row you should have 30 stitches. For our next row, we are going to remove the stitch marker, add in a single crochet and mark it with our stitch marker. This row we are going to be increasing on the 5th stitch, so we're going to place single crochets into the first 4 stitches, and on that 5th stitch we will have 2 single crochets. By the end of this row you should have 36 stitches. This is going to be our last increasing row. So the circle that you have is going to be basically the width of your plushie. If you want your plushie to be any bigger, you can continue this pattern by just adding more stitches as you go around. But we are going to increase again with this row every 6 stitches. So 1 single crochet in the first 5 stitches. In that 6th stitch, we will put 2 single crochets. At the end of this row, you should have 42 stitches. Once you're done with that row, we are going to remove our stitch marker and add in our first stitch. This entire row, for the next few rows actually, is just going to be single crochets. We're not going to be increasing at all. But it is going to be important to count your stitches during these rows. If you're like me, I suck at counting stitches, but it is going to be important, so just try to remember to count those stitches. I am going to add single crochets of my base color until I get to the stitch 11. So 11 stitches of your base color, and you're going to stop for a second. And we are going to switch colors in just a moment. So on that 11th stitch, this is my 11th stitch, I am going into the stitch, yarn over, and then I should have 2 loops on my hook. And you are going to add that second color for your spots and pull through both of those loops. So at this point, this is going to be your new color that you're going to be adding in. The next stitch you do is going to be with this color, so place a single crochet into that next stitch with your new color. On the second stitch, you are going to again change colors. So before completing this stitch, you should have 2 loops on your hook, and you're going to yarn over with your base color and pull through. So now you have successfully switched colors twice, and you are going to continue the rest of this row with your base color. But it is important that you keep your second yarn color underneath those stitches. So if you can kind of see, I have the pink right underneath my white stitches. I'm just adding my single crochets right on top of it, and you are going to continue this pattern all the way around. Once you have gotten back to your stitch marker, we are going to mark our first stitch and place that stitch marker back in. This time you are going to add your base color for the next 10 stitches, and on that 10th stitch we are going to switch colors. I have now reached my 10th stitch, so what I'm going to do is place my hook into that 10th stitch, pull through, then I'm going to yarn over with my second color and pull through, and that is going to be your new color for the next 4 stitches before we switch back to our base color. And just like we were with that base color, I am keeping the white underneath my stitches so that I'm still bringing the yarn with me, but it is not the color showing through. So you just want all of your stitches to go right on top of your base color. This is going to be the stitch where we change colors. So you want 2 loops on your hook, yarn over with your base color, and pull through. For the rest of this row, you are only going to use your base color, and then meet me back when you have this row done. Once again, you're probably seeing the pattern that I am using, where I am going around with my base color until I want to add spots. Now in my pattern, I'm adding spots in very specific places, but you don't have to feel restricted to those places. You could definitely add more or less spots wherever you want. You would just switch colors and put single crochets on top of that base color wherever you would like, and then you would add more spots. For this row though, if you want to continue with the pattern, you are going to go until the 7th stitch, and we are going to switch colors again. If you need a closer look at how I switch colors, rewind the video and go back to one of the earlier switches. But we are switching to our spot color so that on the 8th stitch through the 16th stitch, it will be your spot color. On that 16th stitch, I am going to switch back to my base color and continue to add the base color until I reach the 26th stitch, and I will add in a second spot. On that 26th stitch, I am going to switch back to my spot color and add in a single crochet into my next stitch. And then on the 28th stitch, we are going to switch back to our base color and continue the rest of the row in your base color. This next row is going to be very similar to our last row, where on the 7th stitch we are going to switch colors, And through the 16th stitch, we will be using our spot color, and on that 16th stitch, we will switch back to our base color. So it should be, for this first spot, pretty much identical to the last row. If it's a little bit off, if you're not the best at counting stitches like I am, that's completely okay. The nice thing about these spots is that they don't have to be in a specific place. They are still going to look good even if they're a few stitches off. So don't worry too much about it. But I'm going to switch my colors right here. And then continue with my spot color for the next several stitches until I get to stitch 16, where I'm going to switch back to my base color. And here we are at stitch 16, switching back to our base color, and we will continue with this color for the next several stitches until we reach stitch 26, and we will continue with the spot color until stitch 29. So once you reach that 26th stitch, you are going to switch colors and continue with that color for the next 3 stitches, and then switch back to your base color. So here we are on the 29th stitch, and we are going to switch back to our base color for the rest of the row. Once again, to start our next row, we are going to remove our stitch marker and mark our first stitch. We're going to continue with our base color for the next 8 stitches. On that 9th stitch, we are going to switch to our spot color. On that 9th stitch, switching colors and continuing until stitch 15. On the 15th stitch, we will switch back to our base color. I'm going to continue with this base color until I reach stitch 25, where we will switch to our spot color. This is going to be stitch 25, where I'm again switching colors, and we'll continue with this color until stitch number 30. At 30, we will switch back to our base color and continue the rest of the row in the base color. Repeating our same process, we will remove our stitch marker, place a single crochet into that first stitch, and mark it again. We are going to use our base color until stitch number 11, where we will switch colors. So continue using your base color until you reach the stitch number 11. Here we are at stitch number 11, where I'm going to switch to my second color and continue with this color until I reach the 15th stitch. At stitch number 15, I am going to switch back to my base color. We are going to continue with our base color until we reach stitch number 22. So at 22, switch back to your spot color. Here we are at stitch number 22. We are going to switch to our secondary color and continue placing single crochets into each stitch with this color until we reach stitch number 30. At stitch number 30, we are going to switch back to our base color and continue the rest of the row with our base color. We are now on our next row, and as always, we want to mark our first stitch with that stitch marker. You are going to continue with your base color until you reach stitch number 13. At stitch 13, you are going to switch to your secondary color and add one more single crochet. On stitch number 15, you are going to switch back to your base color. Continue with your base color until you reach stitch number 26. At 26, we will be switching to our secondary color. Here I am at stitch number 26, switching to that secondary color. We are going to continue until we reach stitch number 29, and at 29 we are going to switch colors just like you saw me do right here. We're going to continue the rest of this row with our base color. This time we are going to continue to use our base color until we reach stitch number 28. But of course you want to mark that stitch, that first stitch with your stitch marker, so we know where we started our row, and continue with this color until you reach stitch number 28. At stitch number 28, you're going to switch to your secondary color and place 2 more single crochets in the next 2 stitches. So by stitch number 30, we are going to be switching back to our base color, and you're going to continue to use this color for the rest of the row. That is actually going to be it for our spots for the next few rows. So for the next 3 rows, you are only going to be using your base color, no spots, unless you would like to add more. But I am going to continue using white for the next 3 rows. So meet me back when you have completed the next 3 rows in your base color. By now, our work should look something like this. And we are going to continue with our next row by marking with our stitch marker. We are going to continue to use our base color until you get to stitch number 20. At number 20, we will be switching to our secondary color. Now that I've reached the 20th stitch, I'm going to switch to my secondary color and continue with this color until I reach stitch number 25. At 25, I will switch back to my base color and continue with this color for the rest of the row. Here we are at our next row. As always, I'm going to remove the stitch marker, place a single crochet in that first stitch and mark it with my stitch marker. We are going to continue with our base color until we reach stitch number 19. At 19, we are going to switch to our secondary color. Here I am at stitch number 19, switching to my secondary color, and I will continue with this color until I reach stitch number 26. At 26, we are going to switch back to our base color and continue with the rest of the row in our base color. Our next row starts off the same as any other, but this row will be different because this is where we are going to start to decrease, which will eventually close off our plushie. You want to place single crochets in the first 5 stitches, and on that 6th stitch we are going to do an invisible decrease, which you can see I am placing my hook through the first loop of that 6th stitch, and then the first loop of the 7th stitch. We are yarn over and pull through, yarn over, pull through, and that is your first invisible decrease. We're going to continue this pattern, so place 1 single crochet into the next 5 stitches. On that 6th stitch we are going to decrease again, which you will see in just a moment. So here I am at that 6th stitch again, and I'm placing my hook through the front loops of the next 2 stitches. So you should have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. You want to continue this pattern until you reach stitch number 15. At 15, we will be switching colors again. So here's me at stitch number 15, switching colors, but the next stitch does land on a decrease. Even though we switch colors, you still want to make sure that you are decreasing. On the 19th stitch, you're going to switch back to your base color. Continue this pattern of decreasing with the base color until you reach the end of the row. This will be our last row where we will be adding in spots, and we will be continuing the decrease, but instead of decreasing every 6 stitches, we will be decreasing every 5 stitches. But again, don't forget to mark your first stitch with that stitch marker. Continue to decrease until you reach stitch number 16. At 16, we will be switching back to our secondary color. Here is another close look at an invisible decrease. Again, placing my hook in the front loops of the next 2 stitches, yarn over, pull through those 2 loops, yarn over, pull through all the loops. Again, continue this pattern, decreasing every 5 stitches until you reach stitch number 16. So here I am at stitch number 16 right here, and for me it lands on a color switch, and that is completely okay. We are going to continue it the exact same way as we would with any of the other increases, but instead of pulling through those last 2 loops at the end with your base color, you're going to do it with your secondary color. I know that was a lot of information, so if you need to go back and rewatch it, feel free to do that. You'll continue with your secondary color until you reach stitch number 19. At stitch number 19, I am going to switch back to my base color and continue the pattern of decreasing every 5 stitches. So as I mentioned, that was our last row of spots. So on this next row, you will only be working with that base color, and instead of decreasing every 5 stitches, you're going to decrease every 4 stitches. Again, continue with your base color until you have reached the end of this row. Once again, you've probably gotten the pattern by now. We're going to continue decreasing, and each row is going to be decreasing more and more. So this row we are going to decrease every 3 stitches, as you can see I'm doing right here. And continue with your base color all the way around, decreasing every 3 stitches. By now our work is going to look something like this, and I'm at the portion where I'm going to now end up stuffing the work. So I like to pull the tail of the stitch I'm on a little bit long so it doesn't get lost, and just fill up your plushie with polyfill until it is the sturdiness that you would like. At this point, we are going to continue the pattern. This row, you are going to decrease every other stitch. Around 10 stitches in, we are going to go ahead and add in our horns. So in a second, you're going to see I'm going to grab a 3rd yarn color, and I'm using gray. You can use whatever color you would like, but I am going to switch colors just like how we've been doing and add in this 3rd color, which again for me is gray. Instead of doing a single crochet, what we are going to do is add in 5 double crochets into that same stitch. So should have It's gonna look a little wonky at first, but just trust me on this. Once you have completed your 5th double crochet, which you will see me do in just a second, you are going to place your hook into that first stitch that you created with the gray and slip stitch through. So you can see I'm going yarn over with my base color and pull through. It's going to create this kind of bubble stitch, which kind of protrudes out of the normal form, and that is exactly what we want for it to look like horns. And then I just snipped the rest of that gray off. You're going to continue your pattern of decreasing until you reach another about 10 stitches, where you're going to repeat the process and add in a 2nd horn. If you need to go back and re-watch it again, feel free to do so. It's also important for me to mention that the placement of your horns is not very important. You just want them to be relatively parallel to each other, but it doesn't really matter at what stitch number you add them in. Once you have both of your horns in and you finished that row, we are now going to decrease every single stitch. So no breaks between them, just every single stitch we are going to decrease. By the end of your final row, your work should look something like this. At this point, I'm going to snip off my remaining yarn, but I am going to leave a little bit of excess for that base color to use to stitch our work closed. So at this point, you're going to want your embroidery needle. Go ahead and thread that with your base color. And you can see I am going to place my needle through each of the stitches, going around our work and pulling through. This is just going to close our work all together once you have gone through each of those 6 stitches. Once you've gone through each of the stitches, just pull that tail until the work closes. And then I like to place my needle in the middle of the top of your work and just pull it through the side, and we'll just snip off the excess. And now you have the very oval shaped body of your cow. Now we only have a few details to add in, and then we will be complete. The first details I'm going to add in are the eyes. Personally, I like to use felt for my eyes as well as for the nose of this cow, but you could definitely embroider it in or use safety eyes, whatever you wanted to do. But I just cut out black circles and also a circle of, or I guess it's an oval of pink, and drew on little nostrils, and I'm just gluing that on right here, and lastly gluing on those eyes. At that point, your plushie will look something like this, and I don't know if it's just me, but it's kind of giving the pigs from Angry Birds. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but that's kind of what it feels like. The last step is going to be to add on the ears. So for this, I'm going to go back to using my spot color and create a magic circle and place 6 single crochets into that magic circle. Once you have those 6 single crochets, I'm going to pull that tail of the magic circle shut so that it actually forms a circle. And then we are going to place 2 single crochets into each stitch. Now, I forgot to mark mine with a stitch marker, but you probably want to do that so you remember which was your first single crochet. But by the end of the row, you should have 12 single crochets. By the end of that row, you should have a nice circle. To finish off that circle, I'm just going to place my hook into that first stitch and slip stitch through, just like this. And then snip off the rest of the yarn, leaving a little bit of excess so we can sew it to the body. And then you can just pull your yarn through so that it closes like this. I'm going to weave in this end right here. It's not something you necessarily have to do, but I just placed my hook through one of the stitches and pulled the tail through, and I'm repeating it on the other side just so that both of the ends are coming from the same stitch. But again, you don't really need to do this. This is just me being extra. You now are going to want to repeat this process again so that you have 2 ears, just like this. At this point, we are going to sew them to the body. So again, you want that embroidery needle handy, and we want to thread through one of those tails that we have from our circles. And I lined mine up with the horn, so just using my nail as a guide going down from the horn. I'm going to insert my needle and pull through, and you can see it automatically attached that circle. I'm just going to do this a few more times so that's nice and secure. When you're happy with how it looks and how secure it is, you're going to want to thread your needle underneath the ear, just like this, and then pull it through somewhere random down the body like this. And you're going to do the same exact thing with that second tail that you have there. From here, you can snip off the excess so that those little strands are no longer seen. And that is how you attach the ear. Now you want to do this exact same thing on the other side. Once you've stitched on that second ear, your cow is complete. It looks kind of silly, and I really love this little pattern. Now with my original cow, I just took a little bit of white paint and dotted it on the eyes if you wanted to do that. But that is it. I hope you enjoy.